Tennessee, you have some strong feelings about their Final Four chances or lack thereof. I hate to say this and be Mr. Negative Nancy, but as long as Rick Barnes is the coach, I've always got questions about his teams advancing to the Final Four. I believe it's only happened once, correct? So, I mean, to me, it wouldn't be a great shock if they didn't make the Final Four. And at some point, this would be an incredibly tough decision because Rick Barnes is so likable. Tennessee's administration may have to ask themselves, are we okay with just making the tournament, or do you need somebody that's a little bit more elite if they get bounced out in one of the first two rounds? So what are your thoughts? Tennessee in the Final Four, yay or nay?
Nay. I can actually address Rick Barnes' issue soon too, but I want to say nay, and I'm going to break this down why. So for all of you guys, before we get in, I want to send a shout out to Jimmy Hyams. He's got a piece up right now on our site on the ingredients to make the Final Four and the things that go into play. And he has a lot of great takes: point guard play, defense, rebounding, toughness, free throw shooting. And he actually is almost there in his take on why Tennessee could struggle to make the Final Four. He talks about the offense and says that they have these 4 to 5 minute droughts where they don't score, and they're not always great at getting to the basket when things break down. Both things are true. And he also talked about the fact that there is a belief that Barnes is so obsessed with toughness and playing tough defense throughout the year that it kind of wears you down when the tournament comes. But there's one glaring reason they won't make the Final Four. It's a huge one. Tennessee, in that Texas game that everybody thought was a complete game, was 6 of 19 from 3, 31.6%. On the year, they are 33.9%. No one since the shot clock has been moved back to 30 seconds in 2015, which that was long overdue, by the way. College basketball was a terrible sport before they moved the shot clock down to 30 seconds. No one has made the Final Four not shooting at least 36% from 3. Guys, it's a new day of college basketball. It's getting a little bit closer to the NBA in this way, in the sense that the analytics have made this clear. The three-point shot is more important than the mid-range shot. Rick Barnes seems to be allergic to some of the changes in college basketball. He still loves defense. He still loves, having 2 to 3 big guys for the size advantage, and he'll sacrifice three-point shooting for that. Guys, I'm going to say this. Defense does not win championships in college basketball. It doesn't. People who tell you defense and toughness wins championships are people who think Hoosiers made sense as a movie. Okay, yesterday was Gene Hackman's birthday. That whole pass 4 times before you score would be the dumbest strategy in any level of basketball, in any era of basketball. And
I've never actually seen Hoosiers the whole way through.
Well, Hoosiers was about an undermanned team. The true story somewhat in Indiana that won the state title. But they, it was the 1980s, so they tried to Gene Hackman be the coach, all about team ball and fundamentals and all those lame things that they talk about, and as if other teams don't stress those stuff. But
I think I get the concept of Hoosiers, the great underdog story. But here is what frustrates me about this Tennessee basketball team. This should not be an underdog story. I mean,
yes.
This is a team that has talent, and this is the team that I thought the guard play was going to be extraordinary. And I think the guard play of which you mentioned with the three-point shooting has been very average. I mean, how would you describe the guard play to this point in the season?
Yeah, it has been very average, and part of that is you have a guy in Josiah Jordan James who was banged up early in the year, is finally getting his rhythm back. But then you have your only true point guard is Zakai Ziegler, and you've talked enough about how out of control he plays at times. Tyreek Key is more of a scoring guard, a combo guard, so there's not it kind of could remind me of that Chris Lofton's senior year. Okay, sorry, I have to respond. Elias Gray says, how do we explain Tennessee holding opponents to 22% from 3? In March Madness, you're not going to hold every opponent to 22% from 3. Dave, you know this. You're going to run into a team that's red hot shooting the ball. And guys, learn this about basketball now. Great offense always beats great defense. If you're shooting red hot from 3, there is no amount of defense that can stop it. That's what the Warriors have figured out in the NBA. And so Tennessee will run into a team that shoots really well from three. There is nothing they can do to stop it. And unless they can shoot themselves. And we're talking about it. You're right. The guard play, if it gets into a 3-point shootout, Dave, do you really have faith in this team to be able to hang with another team to outshoot another team?
No, but Elias, if you want to drop that link in there, Elias, I'd appreciate that. He said that ESPN's BPI has Tennessee as a 53% chance at the Final Four, a 38.2% chance at being in the championship game and winning a title at 26%. I mean, if that's the case, then I'm curious about the BPI, like I'm curious about the FPI. Because the FPI gives you all kinds of crazy numbers. Because if you told me right now that I could bet $100 and on Tennessee not winning a championship and I'd get 25 back, which essentially that's what that would be, right? Caleb, you're the gambling guy. If they're 25% chance to win, I could bet 100 on the money line and get 25% back for them not to win, theoretically, right?
I'd have to. I think so.
Anyway, if I could bet $100 and I could lose $100 or I could get $20 back that they win a title, I would bet $100 right now and make my 20%. That's the point I'm trying to make. I don't see a championship out of this crew. I hope I'm wrong. I think that would be just awesome. I mean, I would love for Tennessee's, because I covered them during a lot of the seasons when they had uber talent. I love Ron Slay and I love all those guys. And I'm not a homer if you followed my work, but I just absolutely would love it for Tennessee fans who have been through so much. I mean, what better way to end the academic year than to make a Final Four run? But if you're telling me that they're a 25% chance of winning a national title, boy, I'll put my $100 down and make $20 all day long. I mean, that sounds awful to bet that I would bet against any team, and I don't gamble, but man, a 26% chance to win the title, does that not seem remarkably high to you?
Yeah, and also, well, okay, so the BPI takes into account the most overall, all the factors in basketball, who would be the better team. And this is what I'm trying to talk about, is that Tennessee, as a team, is a Final Four caliber team, as a talent in the way they're constructed. Here's the problem, is that, again, if every game in March Madness, if every round was a 3-game series or a best of 5, yeah, I'd have Tennessee in the Final Four. I'd have them in the Final Four tomorrow because I think they're capable of winning 2 of 3 or 3 of 5 or 4 of 7 against any team in college basketball, the way the NBA playoffs is set up. But the problem is March Madness with the 1-game playoff, win or go home, and you got to do that 4 times. There is, before you get to the Final Four, and then 2 more times to win it, you are inevitably going to run into a team that is just red hot shooting that day. And the rules of basketball in a sport that has a pretty high level of randomness, if it's a 1-game playoff, doesn't matter how good you are at that point, the hot shooting team always wins if you can't hang with them shooting the ball. And so even though I would get that 53% chance at a Final Four, I think would be more valid if again you were doing a best of 3, best of 5, best of 7 series. I don't think it's valid in a 1-game playoff because I don't think Tennessee defensive oriented teams are almost never equipped to hang and go all the way in March Madness because they run into a red hot shooting team. The only way they're equipped is if they can match them with 3-pointers. And Tennessee can't do that on a night in and night out basis, particularly because Rick Barnes has an obsession with playing big. I said, quite honestly, between me and you, Dave, I think Rick Barnes should move Josiah Jordan-James to the 4, have Olivier Nkamhoua starting at the 5, and I think that's it. I think those should be the 2 biggest players on the court in the starting lineup. And
I mean, in this day and age, you really only need, whether you're talking about college or the NBA, you really need only one big guy. I mean, you want 4 guys theoretically that could shoot. It'd be nice if your 5th guy, like you mentioned, the Warriors. It'd be nice if your 5th guy could shoot as well. But you're good with 4 mid-sized to smaller guys. But again, I go back to, and I'm not trying to pick on Zakai Ziegler, okay, but I thought he was going to step up in a leadership role, and he got benched at one point in the season. So at what point? during an NCAA tournament run, does everybody look for a leader and he's not there? Who's the leader right now, Caleb?
I think healthy Josiah James is the leader, but he hasn't been there all year. He hasn't been fully healthy all year. So I would trust Josiah James. I could see him being the leader. The question is, again, I can't see, he played red hot for a little while. I think it was about a week ago, but can you turn to Josiah James to be able to hit shots from outside regularly? Hell, Santiago Vescovi has actually been pretty inconsistent this year relative to what he's been in years past. And so I just think that, again, I've covered enough Rick Barnes teams to know this is what's going to happen. There's going to be a team that, and people think last year was that Michigan plays big, and so that's how Tennessee struggled. That's partially true, but Michigan also shot well from outside, and Tennessee was just off that day. Not to mention, by the way, I want to point this out, but they were less than 70% from the free throw line last weekend. I just think that, again, but I'm with you. It's Zakai Ziegler is going to, that's the one true point guard on the team, and he's going to play out of control, and he's going to make some mistakes. It's funny, Ron Slade mentioned Tony Harris, I guess it was about 2 weeks ago, and some people feel, and I think you would probably feel, that was probably the reason that also with poor coaching, and Jerry Green at the time, that was the reason Tennessee they always lost to a lower seed team in the NCAA tournament under Jerry Green. All 4 years they were eliminated, they lost to a lower seed team. And I think that had a lot to do with Tony Harris at certain times playing out of control. They should have gone to the Final Four one year. They had a huge lead on North Carolina and blew it because they didn't know how to run their offense when North Carolina made a comeback in the Sweet 16.
Well, the other factor in that game is, and North Carolina got very lucky. I remember being at that game, and Brendan Hayward was in foul trouble or fouled out, and they brought in who was the kid who played defensive end for them?
Julius Peppers?
Yeah, they brought in Julius Peppers, and he just lit it up. And not necessarily from a scoring perspective, but he was just an athletic force off the bench. I don't know that they would have put him in if not for Hayward getting in foul trouble. So fortune yet again was against the Vols. And really what killed them is somebody came up to me and goes, "Hey, it looks like we're going to the Final Four." And I'm like, easy, champ. Elias saying 2013 Louisville was the last team to win it primarily with defense.
Shot clock was 35 seconds in 2013, not 30. It's changed with the 30-second shot clock.
True. Yeah, a lot of truth to that. I just I think Tennessee could make the Final Four potentially. If you made me choose one or the other, I would say likely not. I think that Tennessee winning a championship, to me, if that number is correct at 26%, I just find that phenomenal. I mean, who are the other teams that are getting 26%? I mean, Caleb, who are the other? I mean, the thing is right now in basketball, there's not a dominant team this year. And it feels like we say that almost every year, but it's especially true this year. And how many teams do you think could win a national championship in college basketball this year? I would say 20 to 25.
I agree. I think it's wide open because I don't think any team is that standout. I mean, Tennessee, we're talking at Tennessee number 2, Purdue's number 1, and Purdue's kind of built a similar way. They actually shoot worse from 3 than Tennessee does, and they're 21-1 right now. I think that's crazy to think about. I don't think either of those teams can win it. Now, people are going to bring up Tony Bennett and Virginia in 2019. They are all defense, half court, all that stuff. But Virginia, what people forgot about that Virginia team was they were really efficient offensively.
Yeah, they were.
Think Georgia in football this year, where Georgia kept games low scoring, but it wasn't like Georgia couldn't have scored 50 points a game if they wanted to. They just
felt like that Virginia team, if it had to get a score at some point in the game, like it was getting out of hand, that Virginia could get a score. And they ran a lot of back cuts and things like that. But didn't you just feel like if they needed to at some point in the game, whether it's to stop or run or it's at the end of the game, that Virginia team was going to get to?
Oh, easily. It's they absolutely could. They could have easily found a way to score when they needed to, and they always were going to do it when they needed it. And you're right. It was similar to there are certain teams where a lot of times we see a team built a certain way and we assume they can't do other things. I used to say this about the Spurs all the time in basketball. People forgot about the Spurs. Yes, they slowed it down, played inside out, played half-court basketball. But if you tried to turn up the tempo, they could hang with you because they'd have Tony Parker and Bruce Bowen just running the court to keep up with you. So it wasn't like they couldn't turn up the tempo. It was that they chose to play this other way because that was where they had their best advantage. And that was that Virginia team in 2019. Now, if someone chooses to create a shootout with Tennessee basketball in the NCAA tournament, I don't think Tennessee can hang.